make sure you all submit written comments to the FDA. And make sure they're backed up by facts and figures. And if you need assistance, I should say, I don't know why there's assistance in there, right? Talking about the FDA, so it naturally pops up. If you need assistance, these trade groups, right up here, represented here, and there are others as well, are great resources. They'll help you with whatever you want to do. I simply cannot stress enough that complacency and inaction from your industry could result in federal bureaucrats dictating every last detail of how your businesses should be run. You know, that is not what you want. It's not what your consumers need. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat the obvious. Though you have a friend and an advocate in me, and several other members of Congress, your industry gets less than a warm welcome on Capitol Hill. Members like Congressman Henry Waxman, he's a friend of mine. The Hatch-Waxman Act created the modern generic drug industry. So he'll always chat with me about these things, but he's no friend of this industry. So members like Congressman Waxman and my colleague Senator Durbin in the Senate, they've been longtime critics of DSHEA. And due to their key leadership roles in their respective chambers, I expect that they will continue their efforts to enact harmful changes to DSHEA. Now let's be specific about these changes. First, and perhaps most crippling to your industry, is the push for pre-market approval for dietary products and supplements. If this were enacted, it would mean all dietary supplements would be required to submit data, probably consisting of preclinical, clinical, and manufacturing, and be approved by the FDA before they could be marketed. Now that would be disastrous for this industry. This would be similar to the current drug approval process, which costs upwards of $1 billion to create a blockbuster drug, and about 15 years in loss of patent life. So you don't want to get that process. And we lose about 100 to 150,000 people a year because of toxicity in dietary pharmaceuticals. We don't lose anybody because of dietary supplements. We have some outrageous attacks every once in a while, but they can't prove those things. And they couldn't prove them if they tried. Now I'm going to continue to fight tooth and nail to preserve DSHEA and to hold the line against pre-market approval. And you also have to be helpful in that regard. I'm going to pay a lot of attention to you, especially if you back it up with really good facts, statistics, and logic. Now it's important, however, that your industry not just guard against those who would do it harm, but also, I think you ought to take the offensive. I want to bring to your attention one legislative vehicle that would expand the availability of dietary supplements. Earlier this year, I introduced S-1098. This is the Family and Reproductive Health Investment Act. Now, the purpose of this bill is to expand the availability of consumer-directed health products. And among its provisions is an amendment to the definition of qualified health expenses, those expenses that can be reimbursed from a person's health savings account, to include nutritional and dietary supplements. Now, I am confident that with your support, that provision can become law. If it does, it's going to be a tremendous boon to all of you. You need to know that. And it's going to open the doors even more. Well, I've gone up for long enough, and I don't want to take up any more time. We have a lot to cover, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists who will briefly introduce themselves and then discuss with you in more detail how the NDI guidance will impact your industry and other legislation that is currently pending in Congress. So I want to move ahead with our panelists here today.
Thank you very much, Senator Hatch. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm Michael McGuffin. I'm with the American Herbal Products Association. And I just want to start off with a few points. One is this FDA NDI guidance is a draft. It is just the first thinking of FDA on this issue. And as Senator Hatch said, that means we need to comment. We need to be very active in preparing comments. Each of you ought to be thinking about filing comments either on your own or with the trade associations. We're working very closely together and coordinating our messages. But it's very important that the industry speak loudly on this issue. And I want to make the point, because I know there's so much anxiety about this, filing comments works. We had an experience as recently as 2007 when FDA issued draft guidance on that new AER law. And we filed comments, we found 5 specific problems with it, where we asked FDA to change the draft guidance. They changed 4 of those. And I think that's very significant. They really do, under the way that the government is organized, they're required to listen to we the people, and they do, and have a recent experience with us. The one that was most significant on the draft AER guidance, FDA recommended that every time you get an adverse event report, you have to consult with a healthcare practitioner. That's not what the law said. That's not what the Congress intended. We said your guidance shouldn't put us in a position where you are making that recommendation. The final changed that to one of the several listed options, which was a significant change. So again, I'm repeating, it's very important we file comments. Each of you individually need to be involved in a process with one of the trade associations, or working on your own, or doing both of those things. We need to change this draft. I want to point out again an appreciation for what Senator Hatch has done for us already, in addition to his promise to continue to advocate for, and you hear the term that he used so many times, consumer access. That's what this is all about. Senator Hatch sent a letter to FDA just a week or 2 before FDA issued its draft guidance, and he reminded them that the purpose of the guidance needed to be, and I'm quoting here from the letter, to effectuate the regulatory balance of the SHEA, and that is that balance between safety and access. He point blank said that consumers should continue to have access to all of the old ingredients, and FDA shouldn't do anything to disrupt that. He said that the guidance must refrain, again I'm quoting, refrain from erecting barriers that would inhibit or delay access to old ingredients, and FDA needs to minimize regulatory burdens that might inhibit consumer access to lawfully manufactured and labeled dietary supplements. It's very clear where the Senator stands. It's very clear where industry stands. We need to keep our voices focused and get our thoughts lined up and get in there and change this. All of these messages from Senator Hatch were very good messages, and apparently FDA didn't get the memo. If you read the draft, there are numerous ways where this guidance, if it were to be implemented and enforced, would inhibit access. And I'm going to point out just one of these before I pass over to the next speaker. There is in the draft an implied burden to document that your old ingredient is in fact old. The draft asks this question: what documentation would I need to show that my dietary ingredient was marketed before the SHEA? And there are some good examples: written business records, sales records, manufacturing records. But here's the question that wasn't asked: am I required to have affirmative documentation that my ingredients are old dietary ingredients? Because the answer to that is no. The law does not say so. The Congress did not intend to disadvantage new companies. I mean, picture, here's what, if this is carried forward as written or as implied, the implication is that if you're a new company and you want to sell cow meal, you need an 18-year-old record. That doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to put a burden on new companies who couldn't possibly have these old records. Now, we're all working. We have a lot of records, especially on the herb side. I'm sort of a pack rep. I never threw away my records, so I've got good documentation on about 2,000 botanicals, but we're continuing to try to increase that and figure out how to make it accessible. But what we'll say to FDA in our comments is you need to clarify there is no documentation requirement. The requirement is if it's new, do this. There is not a requirement that to start your business you need an 18-year-old piece of paper. I think that's just one example. I'd like to pass now to John Gay, who will, I know, provide some other examples of problems that we see in this draft.
Thank you, Michael. My name is John Gay. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the National Products Association. We're the oldest and largest trade association representing this sector of the economy. 1,200 retail members, 700 manufacturing and other supplier members, large and small. And our mission is to advocate for the rights of the consumers to get the products they need for their health, and for retailers and manufacturers to supply those products. and this guidance is very troubling to us in the